The next flight of SpaceX's next-generation space vehicle, Starship, seems as though it's been just a few months away for over a year now. But now the SpaceX founder's ambition to send his magnum opus rocket to orbit for the first time in the coming weeks is beginning to feel more possible. When asked on Twitter Wednesday when the first orbital flight of Starship might finally happen, Elon replied, "Late next month maybe, but November seems highly likely." A Starship prototype labeled SN-15 completed a high-altitude flight within Earth's atmosphere and landed without exploding on May 5, 2021. That's the last time the spacecraft, which NASA hopes to use to send Artemis astronauts back to the lunar surface, has left the ground. Since then, Musk and SpaceX have been busy preparing for the first orbital demonstration flight of Starship, which will see the vehicle blast off atop a Super Heavy booster for the first time. Just this week, the massive first-stage booster was fired up on the test stand for the first time with 7 engines blasting. That's more than double the number of engines of the previous test and less than a quarter of engines that will make up a fully loaded Super Heavy, which is designed to launch with 33 total engines. In addition to completing testing and getting Super Heavy ready to go, SpaceX needs a launch license from the Federal Aviation Administration before it can launch Starship, not that this requirement has always stopped the company in the past. So ultimately, all eyes are on the FAA, which gave SpaceX a tentative approval when the launch plan passed a key environmental review in June, but with 75 required changes to the mission profile that need to be completed before the license is handed over. Meanwhile, Musk is hoping to do a full wet dress rehearsal of the launch and test fire a 33-engine Super Heavy for the first time in the coming weeks. When Starship and Super Heavy finally launch together, the test flight will send the former for a brief trip to orbit followed by a splashdown off the coast of Hawaii while Super Heavy comes in for a landing attempt on a modified oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. One part of an instrument on the James Webb Space Telescope is out of service temporarily, although project officials are confident it will not be a long-term problem. NASA announced September 20th that it had stopped using one of 4 observing modes on the mid-infrared instrument, MIRI, on JWST after a mechanism that supports that observing mode exhibited what appears to be increased friction during preparations for an observation. Controllers first noticed the issue on August 24th, and the project convened an anomaly team to study it on September 6th. The problem affects medium-resolution spectroscopy observations with the telescope. The other 3 observing modes, imaging, low-resolution spectroscopy, and coronagraphy, are not affected, and observations using those modes of MIRI are continuing. NASA officials played down the issue in presentations at the International Astronautical Congress, IAC, here on September 21st. "We're taking a break and just making sure it works well," said Thomas Serbichin, NASA Associate Administrator for Science, during a plenary presentation. Engineers do not anticipate that this will preclude using this instrument in the future, but they wanted to understand why they're seeing this particular increase in friction, said Eric Smith, JWST program scientist at NASA headquarters, during a press conference later in the day. He described the decision to halt the use of the medium-resolution spectroscopy mode as one made out of an abundance of caution. The issue with MIRI is one of 3 challenges for the operations of JWST that Serbichin mentioned in his IAC presentation. The others are micrometeoroid hits on the telescope's mirrors and access to the Deep Space Network, DSN, for communications during the upcoming Artemis 1 mission. Smith said the project is seeing the expected number of micrometeoroid hits on the mirror, but that one of the impacts, during the spacecraft commissioning process, was larger than expected. "We expect maybe 1 hit of that magnitude per year," he said. "So far, the indications are we've seen that hit early, but we'll have to verify that over the course of the year." He said after the briefing that the demands on the Artemis 1 mission may limit the amount of time the DSN can communicate with JWST. "In nominal operations, we have 8 hours of contact a day," he said. "We start to be concerned when it gets below 4 hours a day. There may be a handful of days during the mission when DSN time drops below that 4-hour threshold," he said. In that case, controllers will plan observations that require fewer data storage on the spacecraft so it can go longer between DSN contacts. Stuff gets shuffled around, but it doesn't prevent science. JWST continues to perform at or above expectations otherwise. At the IAC press conference, the mission released an infrared image of the planet Neptune, its rings and moons, the most detailed look at the distant planet since the Voyager 2 spacecraft flew by it in 1989. The telescope has also observed galaxies in the distant universe, showing some that date back to just 400 million years after the Big Bang. James Webb has been delivering data to us for a little over 2 months, and already in that time it's revolutionized the field of very early and distant galaxies, said Guido Roberts-Borsani, a postdoc at UCLA involved in those observations, at the press conference. Let's see what we can do in a year. In a rare media release, SpaceX said it will appeal a funding decision related to its Starlink broadband satellite constellation, which aims to send internet service to rural areas across the world. The space launch services giant was recently rejected for nearly $900 million in rural connectivity funding from the Wireline Competition Bureau, a branch of the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC. SpaceX characterized that decision as grossly unfair in its September 9th appeal to the regulator, which is under review. Simultaneously, SpaceX competitor Link received FCC approval on September 16 for its satellite-to-phone connection network, now only lacking a mobile phone service partner to bring the service. The news comes as SpaceX, seeking that same market, already announced a forthcoming partnership with T-Mobile in August even though it wasn't approved by the FCC for that service yet. SpaceX, founded by billionaire Elon Musk, seeks to serve rural areas through a network of satellites, while Link plans periodic access to space through an orbital cell tower. Link already demonstrated satellite-to-phone service in a test last year, according to Via Satellite. Although the service would be only itinerant, Link says it would be useful for rural emergency situations. While Link has the approval to operate the service, in theory, the next steps for making it operational will include a frequency check with its eventual mobile phone service partner to ensure that its operations do not interfere with other satellites in orbit, according to TechCrunch. Another player in cell phone coverage from space is Apple, which announced last week that its iPhone 14 would have an SOS satellite service for emergencies through Globalstar starting in November.
And that wraps up today's episode. We would also like to take the time to thank you for your continuous support of SpaceX community, and if you'd like to show us that you enjoyed today's episode, please click the like button, subscribe to us and don't forget to click the notification bell, so you will know when we upload future content.